Ever thought Canada was all maple syrup and polite sorries? Think again. We're about to dive into the dark underbelly of the Great White North, where some cities are more dangerous than you'd ever imagine. Buckle up as we count down the top 10 most dangerous cities in Canada, and trust me, number 1 might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew about our friendly neighbors up north. You heard that right, folks. Canada's got a dangerous side, and it's not pretty. We're talking cities where you might want to think twice before walking alone at night. And get this, Brampton, Ontario's 9th largest city, is on our list. Surprised? You shouldn't be, or should you? LOL. This isn't just random gossip either. We've dug into the latest crime stats and local reports to bring you the real deal. So if you're thinking about moving to Canada or even just visiting, you might want to pay attention. These aren't your typical tourist traps. They're the places where danger could be lurking around every corner. Ready to find out which cities made the cut? Let's get into it. The unexpected danger zone, Brampton. All right, number 1 on our list might shock you. It's not a big city like Toronto or Vancouver. It's Brampton, a place that's been flying under the radar. But let me tell you, the stats we've dug up, they're going to make your jaw drop. Now, you might have heard Brampton called Bramladesh or Brown Town, but those nicknames barely scratch the surface of what's really going on in this suburban city. Sure, it's known for its diverse demographics, but there's a darker side that's been making headlines lately. Let's talk numbers. In 2022, Brampton saw a whopping 80% increase in car thefts compared to the previous year. That's not a typo, folks, 80%. You might want to think twice before leaving your ride unattended in this city. But it's not just your car you need to worry about. Violent crime in Brampton is on the rise, too. The city's seen a 13% increase in assaults and a 10% jump in robberies. And get this, there's been a 32% spike in sexual violations. These aren't just numbers, they're real people being affected every day. So what's causing all this? Well, Brampton's population has been growing like crazy. It's one of the fastest growing cities in Canada, but the police force hasn't kept up. In fact, Peel Regional Police say they're short about 200 officers to properly serve Brampton and Mississauga. But it's not just about the cops. Brampton's got some serious issues with gangs and organized crime. Just last year, police busted a major auto theft ring operating out of the city. They recovered millions of dollars worth of stolen vehicles destined for overseas markets. And it's not like the local government's been sitting on its hands. They've tried to tackle the problem, but their efforts have been about as effective as using a water gun to put out a forest fire. In 2022, they launched a Project Safe Streets initiative, but crime rates just kept climbing. Now, you might be thinking, come on, it can't be that bad. This is Canada we're talking about. But the reality is, Brampton's earned its spot as number 1 on our list of most dangerous cities in Canada. It's not just about the crime stats, it's about the trend. Things are getting worse, not better. Don't believe me? Just look at the headlines. Brampton man charged in shooting that left 1 dead, 2 injured. Police investigating string of violent carjackings in Brampton. Brampton sees surge in gun violence, police say. These aren't one-off incidents, they're becoming the norm. And here's the kicker. All this is happening in a city that's supposed to be part of the Greater Toronto Area, one of the most desirable places to live in Canada. It just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover or a city by its neighbors. The Prairie predicament, Winnipeg and Regina. But Brampton isn't the only surprise on our list. There's trouble brewing in the heartland, and it's not just about wheat fields and hockey. What's turning Winnipeg and Regina into unexpected danger zones? The answer might make you rethink everything you know about Canadian crime. When you think of dangerous cities, your mind probably jumps to big metropolises like Toronto or Vancouver. But here's the kicker. 2 mid-sized prairie cities are giving them a run for their money. Yep, we're talking about Winnipeg and Regina. Let's start with Winnipeg, the capital of Manitoba. This city's got a reputation, and it's not for its friendly folks or beautiful rivers. Winnipeg's been dubbed the violent crime capital of Canada for years now. In 2022, it topped the list with a crime severity index of 128.8. That's more than double the national average, folks. But what's really going on in Winnipeg? Well, it's not just about petty theft or bar fights. We're talking serious stuff here. Homicides, sexual assaults, robberies, you name it, Winnipeg's got it. And get this, the city saw a 27% increase in violent crimes in 2022 compared to the previous year. That's not a trend you want to see. Now let's hop over to Regina, Saskatchewan's capital. Don't let its small size fool you. This city packs a punch when it comes to crime. Regina comes in second on our list, with a crime severity index of 125.8. That's not far behind Winnipeg, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Regina's got its own set of problems. Property crime is through the roof, with break-ins and thefts being almost daily occurrences. But it's not just about stolen bikes and broken windows. Violent crime is on the rise too, with a 20% increase in 2022. So what's the deal with these prairie cities? Why are they more dangerous than some of Canada's largest cities? Well, it's not a simple answer, but poverty plays a big role. Both Winnipeg and Regina have high rates of poverty, especially among Indigenous communities. This often leads to increased drug use, gang activity, and crime. Speaking of drugs, both cities are dealing with a serious meth problem. Winnipeg's police chief even called it a crisis that's fueling much of the city's crime. In Regina, meth-related offenses have skyrocketed in recent years. Now you might be thinking, surely they're doing something about this, right? Well, yes and no. Both cities have launched various initiatives to combat crime. Winnipeg's got its Safe Streets program, and Regina's implemented community policing strategies. But here's the thing, these efforts haven't made much of a dent in the crime rates. In fact, some argue that these cities are stuck in a vicious cycle. High crime rates lead to businesses closing and people moving away, which leads to more poverty and more crime. It's a tough nut to crack. But don't write these cities off just yet. Despite their problems, both Winnipeg and Regina have their charms. They're known for their friendly people, vibrant art scenes, and beautiful natural surroundings. It's just that, well, you might want to keep one eye over your shoulder while you're enjoying the prairie sunset. West Coast woes, Surrey and Abbotsford. All right, time to leave those prairie sunsets behind and head to the land of rain and mountains. Surrey and Abbotsford might look like postcard-perfect towns, but don't let those views fool you. What's causing these British Columbia beauties to rank among Canada's most dangerous cities? Let's start with Surrey, the second largest city in BC. It's got a reputation, and not for its stunning parks or diverse culture. In 2022, Surrey's crime rate jumped by 7%, with violent crime seeing a 16% increase. We're talking about assaults, robberies, and even homicides. And get this, Surrey's got a gang problem that just won't quit. The city's been battling gang violence for years, with shootings and drug-related crimes making headlines way too often. But it's not just about gangs. Surrey's seeing a rise in property crimes too. Car thefts, break-ins, you name it. In fact, property crime went up by 5% in 2022. That's a lot of people waking up to find their stuff gone or their homes trashed. Now let's hop over to Abbotsford. This city might be known for its farms and fruit, but it's got a darker side. Abbotsford's crime rate has been on a roller coaster ride, with some years seeing improvements and others not so much. In 2022, the city saw a 3% increase in overall crime, with violent crimes going up by 8%. But here's where Abbotsford really stands out. Drug crimes. The city's been hit hard by the opioid crisis, with drug-related offenses skyrocketing. We're talking about a 30% increase in drug crimes in just 1 year. That's not just numbers on a page, folks. That's real people struggling with addiction and communities dealing with the fallout. So what's the deal with these West Coast cities? Why are they more dangerous than you'd expect? Well, it's a mix of things. Both Surrey and Abbotsford are dealing with rapid population growth, and their infrastructure and police forces are struggling to keep up. They're also gateway cities for international crime, thanks to their proximity to the U.S. border and major ports. But it's not all doom and gloom. Both cities are fighting back. Surrey's got its Surrey Gang Enforcement Team that's been cracking down on gang activity. And Abbotsford? They've launched a bunch of programs to tackle drug addiction and help at-risk youth. The thing is, These efforts are kind of like trying to bail out a leaky boat with a teacup. They're making a difference, sure, but the problems are just so big. And here's the kicker. Despite all this, Surrey and Abbotsford are still growing. People are moving there for the jobs, the scenery, the promise of that West Coast lifestyle. So where do these cities rank on our list of Canada's most dangerous cities? Well, Surrey comes in at number 4, while Abbotsford sits at number 7. That might not sound too bad, but remember, we're talking about all of Canada here. These cities are more dangerous than places like Montreal or Calgary. Now you might be thinking, come on, it can't be that bad. This is Canada we're talking about. But the reality is, Surrey and Abbotsford have earned their spots on this list. It's not just about the crime stats, it's about the trends. Things are getting worse, not better. Wow, you're still here? Awesome. I'm so glad you're finding this interesting. If you're digging it, please consider subscribing. It means the world to me and helps me to keep making content like this. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks, our next one is Ontario's outcasts, Thunder Bay and North Bay. You'd think Toronto would top the list of dangerous cities in Ontario, right? Wrong. There are a couple of underdogs in the province that might surprise you. Thunder Bay and North Bay are punching way above their weight class when it comes to crime rates. These smaller cities are giving the big metropolis a run for its money, and not in a good way. Let's start with Thunder Bay. This northern Ontario city might be known for its breathtaking views of Lake Superior, but it's got a dark side that's hard to ignore. In 2022, Thunder Bay's crime severity index hit 125.9, making it the third most dangerous city in Canada. That's right, folks. This city of just over 100,000 people is more dangerous than Toronto, Montreal, or even Vancouver. But what's really going on in Thunder Bay? Well, it's not just petty theft or vandalism. We're talking about serious violent crimes. The city's got a homicide rate that's through the roof, nearly 5 times the national average. And it's not just murders. Assaults, sexual violations, and robberies are all way higher than they should be for a city this size. Now let's hop over to North Bay. This city might be smaller than Thunder Bay, but it's got its own set of problems. North Bay's crime severity index in 2022 was 110.5, landing it at number 8 on our list of Canada's most dangerous cities. That's higher than cities like Ottawa or Hamilton, which have way more people. So what's the deal with North Bay? Well, it's seeing a spike in property crimes, break-ins, car thefts, you name it. But it's not just about stolen stuff. Violent crimes are on the rise too, with a 12% increase in 2022 compared to the previous year. Now, you might be wondering what's turning these smaller Ontario cities into crime hotspots. Well, it's not a simple answer, but there are a few factors at play. First off, both Thunder Bay and North Bay are dealing with some serious drug problems. Opioid addiction is hitting these communities hard, and with drug use comes drug-related crimes. Thunder Bay's got a meth problem that's fueling a lot of its violent crime. Then there's the geographical factor. Both cities are kind of isolated, sitting on major trucking routes. This makes them prime spots for drug trafficking. And where there's drug trafficking, there's usually other types of crime too. But it's not just about drugs. These cities are struggling with poverty and unemployment rates higher than the provincial average. In Thunder Bay, about 13% of the population lives below the poverty line. That's a recipe for increased crime rates right there. And here's another kicker. Both cities have significant Indigenous populations that have been historically marginalized. This has led to social issues that contribute to higher crime rates. In Thunder Bay, for example, there's been a disturbing trend of violence against Indigenous people. Now, you might be thinking, surely they're doing something about this, right? Well, yes and no. Both cities have launched various initiatives to combat crime. Thunder Bay's got its community safety and well-being plan, and North Bay's implemented community policing strategies. But here's the thing. These efforts are kind of like trying to plug a dam with chewing gum. They're making some difference, but the problems are just so big and complex. So where do Thunder Bay and North Bay rank on our list of Canada's most dangerous cities? Well, Thunder Bay comes in at number 3, while North Bay sits at number 8. That might not sound too bad, but remember, we're talking about all of Canada here. These cities are more dangerous than places like Toronto or Ottawa, which have way more people and you'd think would have more crime. The unexpected entries, rounding out the top 10. All right, we've covered some unexpected entries from Ontario, but the rest of our top 10 list is about to blow your mind. You might think you know which cities are the most dangerous in Canada, but trust me, you're in for a shock. Let's round out this list and see which places beat out some of Canada's biggest metropolises for the dubious honor of being the most dangerous. Coming in at number 5, we've got Lethbridge, Alberta. Yeah, you heard that right. This small city of about 100,000 people is more dangerous than Toronto or Vancouver. Lethbridge has been dealing with a serious drug problem, particularly with meth and opioids. This has led to a spike in property crimes and violent offenses. In 2022, Lethbridge's crime severity index hit 141.8, way above the national average. Next up at number 6 is Kelowna, British Columbia. Known for its beautiful lakes and wineries, Kelowna's got a dark underbelly. The city's seen a surge in property crimes, with break-ins and car thefts becoming all too common. But it's not just about stolen stuff. Violent crimes are on the rise, too, with assaults and robberies making headlines more often than the locals would like. Number 7 on our list is Abbotsford, British Columbia, which we talked about earlier. Remember those drug problems and the spike in violent crimes? Yeah, that's why it's here. At number 8, we've got North Bay, Ontario, another city we've already covered. Its high crime severity index and rising violent crime rates earned it a spot on this list. Rounding out our top 10 at number 9 and 10 are Red Deer, Alberta, and Brantford, Ontario. Red Deer's been struggling with a high rate of property crimes and drug-related offenses. Meanwhile, Brantford's seen a worrying increase in violent crimes, particularly assaults and robberies. Now, you might be wondering, where are cities like Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver on this list? Well, here's the kicker. They didn't make the cut. Yeah, you heard that right. Some of Canada's largest cities aren't even in the top 10 most dangerous. So why is that? Well, it turns out size doesn't always correlate with danger. These smaller cities are dealing with unique challenges that are driving up their crime rates. Things like drug epidemics, economic struggles, and rapid population growth without matching infrastructure improvements are all playing a part. Let's break it down. Most of these cities are dealing with serious drug problems, particularly meth and opioids. This leads to more property crimes as addicts try to fund their habits, and more violent crimes as the drug trade brings gang activity. Economic factors are another common thread. Many of these cities are facing higher unemployment rates and poverty levels than the national average. When people are struggling to make ends meet, crime rates tend to go up. But here's something interesting. Despite their high crime rates, most of these cities are still growing. People are moving there for jobs, lower cost of living, or the promise of a smaller city lifestyle. It just goes to show that there's more to a city than its crime stats. The hard truth about Canadian safety. So what have we learned about Canada's dangerous cities? Well, for starters, it's not always the big cities you need to worry about. Places like Brampton, Thunder Bay, and Winnipeg are giving Toronto and Vancouver a run for their money when it comes to crime rates. And it's not just about petty theft either. We're talking serious stuff like violent crimes and drug problems. This really challenges the idea that Canada's some kind of safety utopia. Sure, it's still a great country, but it's got its issues just like anywhere else. And these problems seem to be getting worse, not better. What do you think? Have you been to any of these cities? Did you feel safe there? Let me know in the comments. It's clear that the face of Canadian cities is changing, and not always for the better. Maybe it's time we stop sugarcoating things and face the hard truth about safety in Canada.